Good morning, everyone. How is everyone this morning? Um, oh, I can't believe I'm up at this time. Kidding on. I just want to apologise, everybody, for this week's shows. It's been manic, um, with everything that's going on. So I just thought tonight this morning, my time, I'll do a show. So how is everyone? I will share this out quickly. It's one of those ones. So I will share this out. Can't believe today is Friday. Happy Friday to everyone. I'm just sharing out. So, oh, we've got one in the chat. If somebody says hi, that would be great, just so that you can hear me. So I know obviously you can hear me. That would be great if somebody could say hello. Because there's nothing worse in case people don't hear me. I'll just quickly share this out, guys, and then I'll begin. Again, my apologies for last night, guys. And yesterday morning, obviously. I had a bit of a family emergency, so it's been one of those ones. So I'm talking about my favourite part of a serial killer. My favourite one, the one that inspired Hollywood films such as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Psycho. So this will be an interesting one, guys. What I will do say to you, as I will tell you every show, is that what you will hear is going to be very, very graphic. So please be aware that this show is going to be very graphical, very graphical. Especially this one, because everybody knows that Ed Gein was a very graphical case. In fact, it was such a case that it was actually popular worldwide, and everybody, all journalists were not just coming from America, they were coming from places like Canada, even England, and I learned that in a documentary, that people were actually coming from England to that small place in Plainfield, Wisconsin, to cover the story of Ed Gein, which you can imagine, small town, the locals wouldn't like people coming from all types of towns. So sorry guys, I'm still trying to share this out. My phone is as slow as shit this morning. So yeah. Sorry guys. But if anybody can hear me, if you could put a definitely hi or something, that would be great, guys. Or even an emoji. You know what? Right, so who was Ed Gein and what did he do? Ed Gein was known as the Butcher of Plainfield, or most title that Ed Gein was known as was the Plainfield Ghoul. He was an American murderer. Now, people say that Ed Gein was a serial killer. I tend not to agree. He was suspected serial killer. The two murders that he did was a lady from a store and a lady from a pub that Gein was known to go to. He was described as being very, very strange. Very, very strange. He was described as being also very down to earth. He would do anything for anyone in the town. People trusted Ed Gein with their children. People said that he used to have conversations with Ed and he spoke to them fine. Hey Terry, thank you. I was waiting for somebody to say hi so that I knew that somebody could hear me. Ed Gein, when you look at his life, he had a quite a rough life with his mother. His mother was very into religion and would rhyme Bible verses at Gein and would chastise Gein even. He was. I'm fascinated with Gein, and I'm fascinated with Gein because the things that he done was so macabre. It was unreal. His early life, he was born in August 27, 1906. He was the second of two boys. Gein had an elder brother named Henry. His mum, Augusta, was very, very religious, frequently preaching to her boys about immortality of the world, the evil drinking, her belief that all women were naturally bad, and instruments of the devil, because that's the way that Augusta would describe the women, was that they were instruments of the devil and they were bad. And Gein never really spoke to anyone. He was known to be much of a loner. She actually reserved time every afternoon to read them from the Bible. Usually she would select verses from the Old Testament and the book of Revelation, concerning death, murder, divine retribution. But Gein was absolutely idolised his mother and became obsessed with her, people could say. Gein's father actually owned a local grocery shop, but they soon sold the business and left the city, went from that to an isolation, a 155-acre farm in the town of Plainfield, Wisconsin, which is a very, very small town, which became a permanent residence there. So his mother would isolate people from coming to the farm, like turning away outsiders who could have influence on her sons. She was very, very controlling. So Gein left the farm only to attend school. So outside of school, he spent most of his time on the farm. He would work on the farm, and he was very shy. And when you look at his school life, the teachers and the classmates always found Gein to be very, very strange. He had a strange way about him. Like, he would laugh at his own jokes. He wouldn't be allowed to make friends. If he made friends, his mother punished him. Despite his poor social development, he did fairly well at school. So he did. So on April the 1st, 1940, Gein's father died of heart failure. So you can imagine that Ed and his brother Henry started to do jobs around the town to help people, but it was more for them to make the wage because obviously the father was now passed away. Ed also frequently babysat for the neighbours. He enjoyed babysitting. He seemed to relate more with children than adults. Then Henry, his brother, started dating and planned to move in with her. He was worried about his brother's attachment to their mother, but Ed would not take that. Ed would not take the fact that Henry was speaking ill of their mother. He was very, very, very close to his mother. So this is the strange thing. On May the 16th, 1944, Ed and his brother were away burning mash on a property, and the fire got out of control. By the end of the fire, having been put out and the firefighters gone, Ed reported his brother missing. Now, this was what the strange thing was. There was a search party searching for his brother, whose body was found lying face down. Now, morning, Lynn. Now, apparently, he'd been dead for some time. The thing that makes it really strange is that Ed Gein actually pointed out where his brother was. For all he told the services, he didn't know where his brother was. He actually led the police to his brother's body, which you could question: did Ed, sorry, kill Henry? Now, there was bruising on Henry that was unexplained, and it was put down to unexplained. He had bruises on his head. Now, that suggests that Henry could have had, head force trauma. But police dismissed the possibility of foul play, and the county coroner later officially listed that he disaspirated as the cause of death. But the authorities accepted it was an accident, but no official investigation was conducted, and there wasn't any autopsy to say what had actually happened. Questioning Gein, when obviously they questioned Gein about the death of Bernice Warden in 1957, they brought up Henry's death because it made them think, is it possible and likely that the death was the Cain? Let's say it this way: was it, Henry's death? Was it the Cain and Abel aspect of this case? Now, everybody knows the story of Cain and Abel. Hi, Nicola. Hope you have a good day, love. Thank you. With Henry now out the road, shall we say, Ed and Augusta were now alone. Now, Augusta had a stroke shortly after Henry's death, which you could imagine the stress of. So Ed had devoted his whole time to look after her. Sometime in 1945, um, Augusta had witnessed a gentleman beating a dog, um, but Smith beat the dog to death. Augusta was extremely upset by the scene. Um, Augusta told Ed that the woman was not married to Smith and so had no business being there. And she started saying bad stuff about the woman and calling her a harlot. But Augusta then went on to have a second stroke, which she passed away on December 29, 1945. She was 67 at the time. Now, you can imagine how Ed Gein was at this time. He was absolutely devastated by her death. He'd lost his friend and he was absolutely alone in the world. Now, you can imagine what that would have done to Ed Gein's mind. It would have had a very bad psychological view in him and how he's seen the world, what his already delusional for that could have been made 10 times worse. So Gein actually held on to the farm, and he would still do odd jobs. He actually boarded up the rooms used by his mother, including upstairs, downstairs parlour and living room, leaving them untouched. So he actually downsized the house and he lived in a small room next to the kitchen. He began then from there becoming interested in reading pulp magazines, adventure stories, particularly those involving cannibals or Nazi symbols. Gein, he occasionally worked for the local road crew in Plainfield area. So he was some man when you look back at his life. When I look at his life and I look at the nature and nurture debate, I kind of put Gein down as nurture, because of his mum. Bye, love. Because of his mum and the way she treated him, and I don't think Gein had it in him as nature. So when we look at what crimes that Ed Gein had done, now we've covered obviously his early life. Now going on to the crimes that he's done. It started on November the 16th, 57, when hardware store owner Bernice Warden disappeared in Plainfield. Now you can imagine that people were looking to go to this hardware store. The hardware store was shut for the entire day. But at the time it was deer hunting season. So Warden's son entered the store around 5 p.m. that day to find that the cash register had been open and there was blood stains on the floor. The son told investigators that on the evening before his mother's disappearance, Gein had been in the store, and what Gein was looking for was a gallon of antifreeze and was expected to be there the next morning to pick it up. Now, there is sales slips for the antifreeze, but that was the last written receipt by Warden. That evening, Gein was arrested at West Plainfield grocery store, to which then, this is where the very graphical part comes in. The sheriff's deputy discovered Warden's decapitated body in a shed in Gein's property, hung upside down by her legs, with a crossbar at her ankles, ropes at her wrists. The torso was dressed out like a deer. Her head was decapitated. She'd been shot with a .22 caliber rifle. The mutilations were made after her death. Now, when the investigators got into Gein's house, now guys, strong viewers discretion advised here. There was whole human bones and fragments. There was a wastebasket made of human skin. Human skin covering several chairs. There were skulls on his bedposts. There was female skulls, some with tops sewn off. There was bowls made from human skulls. There was a corset made from female torso skin from shoulders to waist, which Ed Gein would wear by himself. He would even cut the skin off of ladies' legs and make leggings out of them, and wear them and kid on that he was a lady. There's masks made from the skin of female heads. Mary Hogan, the lady who run the tavern, the pub that Ed Gein used to go into, was missing 3 years prior. Now, everyone didn't understand how she went missing. So one officer actually went into a room and put his hand in a paper bag and he pulled out her face. Mary Hogan's skull was also found in a box. Bernice Warden's entire head was in a sack. Her heart was in a plastic bag in front of Gein's potbelly stove. There was 9 Velcros in a shoebox. The list is very endless. I mean, a young girl's dress and the Velcro of 2 females judged to have been about 15 years old. There was a belt made from human nipples. There was 4 noses, a pair of lips on a window shade drawstring, a lampshade made from the skin of a human face. There was fingernails from female fingers. Now, I know I'm being very graphical here, guys, but this is what the police found when they had went into Gein's property. So you can imagine how emotionally scarred and damaged that these officers must have been. There's actually said to be that the officers were really quite sick when they were finding this stuff, which is only normal, guys, when obviously you can imagine you set the scene, right? These officers go in to search someone's house and this is what they discover. They discover all this stuff. Personally, I would be emotionally scarred and I'm no ashamed to admit this, I would be very, very sick as well. If I was finding things that were, because you don't expect that, you don't expect to be walking into these situations. These artifacts were actually photographed at the state crime lab and then you can imagine was disposed of. Now Ed Gein was arrested and interviewed and he told the investigators that between 1947 and 1952 he had went to many graveyards to exhume recently bodies. Now, he became fascinated with people dying. If there was notices up about people dying, Ed Gein would actually go to the extreme of finding out when the person was getting buried, where they were getting buried, and then he would show up and he would take the bodies after dark. Um, it was like he was in a dazed-like state. Um, on about 30 of those visits, he said he came out of the days while in the cemetery. He left the grave in good order and returned home empty-handed. Um, but then there's the other occasions where he's dug up the graves of recently buried middle-aged women he thought resembled his mother. That's what Ed Gein was looking for. Ed Gein was looking for women who represented his mother. That's why he liked Mary Hogan, his second victim. No, sorry, his first victim, because his second victim was Bernice Worden. Mary Hogan was described as a burly woman that basically loved to have banter, have a laugh. Her mouth was like a sailor. Now you can imagine that Ed Gein was the total polar opposite of Mary Hogan. But what he seen in Mary Hogan was she was very much like his mother. And this is all Ed Gein wanted. Ed Gein wanted people that were like his mother. Um, so he would take the bodies home where he tanned their skin to make them look like his mother. He actually wore the faces that he carved off as well, which I forgot to mention, guys. Um, he actually admitted to stealing from 9 graves, and he led investigators to their locations. Um, Gein was the test graves were exhumed because authorities were uncertain as to whether the slight Gein was capable of single-handedly digging up a grave during a single evening. They were found as Gein described. So Gein had actually described the caskets. One casket was empty, another casket contained Gein's crowbar, and the final casket saw most of the body missing, yet Gein had returned rings and some body parts. Though Gein's confession, well, could you really say did it really happen? Um, Soon after his mum's death, though, Gein began to create a women's suit so that he could become his mother. That's what he wanted, was to literally crawl into her skin. Now, the one thing about Gein is that he did deny that he was having sex with the bodies, saying that they smelt too bad. Now, during his interrogation, he admitted to shooting 51-year-old Mary Hogan, whose head was found in the house, but he later denied memories of details of her death. A 16-year-old whose parents were friends of Gein, who attended baseball games and movie with him, reported that Gein kept shrunken heads in his house, which he described as relics sent by his cousin, who had served in the Philippines World War II. But upon investigation, these were determined to have human facial skins carefully peeled from corpses and used by Gein as masks. During questioning, um, a sheriff actually attacked Gein by banging his head and face into a brick wall. which this brought Gein's initial confession, which was then ruled as indemnifiable. Many who knew this sheriff, said that he was traumatised by the horror of Gein's crimes, and this, along with the fear of having to testify against assaulting Gein, which then led to the sheriff's death, because he had heart failure. Hey Kelly, how you doing, love? Welcome to the show. So, in addition to the murders of Hogan and Warden, Gein was also considered a suspect in several other unsolved cases in Wisconsin. And hi, Noreen. In November 1957, authorities confronted Gein while listing missing people cases that had occurred through the death of his mother and Warden. Their suspicions were further aroused after the discovery of Hogan's remains. However, Gein went under a lie detector, which then cleared him of any other murders, and his psychiatrist concluded that his violence was only directed to women who resembled his mother. I'll give you a couple of instances of people who were missing. Now, there's said to be an 8-year-old missing near her farm. She was given a lift home from grade school. Witnesses reported seeing a dark-coloured, possibly black 1936 Ford sedan. Gein owned a black 1937 Ford, so can't really say that was him. There was a 15-year-old missing while babysitting a 20-month-old girl. She disappeared as well. Gein was questioned regarding this 15-year-old's missing disappearance. However, he denied involvement in the disappearance, and he passed 2 lie detector tests, and there was no trace of this 15-year-old's remains during the search of Gein's property. In addition, Gein had also been linked to a 1954 disappearance of a neighbour who lived near Gein. So she went missing after performing chores. That was also a potential victim for Gein, because obviously he was looked at for that as well. Now, when we look at the trial for Ed Gein, on November 21st, 1957, Gein was arrested on one count of first-degree murder. He pled not guilty by insanity. Now, Ed Gein was diagnosed with schizophrenia and found mentally incompetent. Now, one of the sheriffs that I seen in a documentary had spoke about Ed Gein, and they said how terrified Ed Gein was, and kept asking, what's going to happen to me, what's going to happen to me. Now, you can imagine how scared Ed must have been. He was sent to a Central State Hospital for the criminally insane, which was in Madison. In 1968, doctors determined Gein was mentally able to confer with counsel and obviously work in his defence. The trial actually began on November the 7th, 1968, and it lasted 1 week. So a psychiatrist testified that Gein had told him that he did not know whether the killing of Warden was intentional or it was accidental. The way that he described Warden was that he examined a gun in Warden's store, and the weapon discharged and killed Warden. He said that he'd not aimed the rifle at her. and did not remember anything else that happened that morning. At the request of the defence, Gein's trial was held without a jury, and Gein was found guilty on November the 14th. A second trial dealt with Gein's sanity. After testimony by the doctors, he was not guilty by reason of insanity, and he was ordered to be committed to the Central State Hospital. That's where he would be spending the rest of his life, in the mental hospital. So he was only tried for one murder, and that was the hard store owner, Denise Warden, even though he had also admitted to killing Mary Hogan. Now you can imagine all the journalists came across the world to see Ed Gein's property to cover the story. Now there was people coming from America, or now all across America. It wasn't just people from Wisconsin. It was people coming from other states to cover the story. Canada, people were actually coming from England, ladies and gentlemen, to cover the Ed Gein story. Now you can imagine how Plainfield must have felt about it. Looking at a documentary that I watched, the people were in an uproar about having people in their wee town covering the story. People were getting pestered for comments, and people felt really, really intrusive of their privacy. So Gein's house, his possessions were scheduled to be auctioned. Now, early on the morning of March 20th, the house was destroyed by a fire. Now, I've got theories in this one, because they say that they don't know how the house was set on fire. For me, I personally think that the town did it to get rid of any attention to Gein's property. So they've burnt it down. That is just my theory though, folks. That's just my opinion. That is very, very convenient how, the house went on fire. Now, Ed Gein was notified about the fire, and the response that the officers got was he was just like, oh well, sort of thing. Even though arson was suspected, but the cause of the fire was never officially determined. It's possible that the fire was not considered a matter of urgency. When Gein learned the incident while in detention, he shrugged and just said just as well. So he definitely knew they had done the right thing. But people in Plainfield were so happy when the fire happened. They were absolutely excited that this house was now gone. The weight was off their shoulders. You wouldn't have all these tourists. You wouldn't have all these people flocking to see it. You wouldn't have journalists. Even though it's still known today for people going to visit, even though there's nothing there, I don't think. Gein died to lung cancer, to secondary lung cancer, in 1984 at the age of 77. Over the years, souvenir seekers take stuff from his gravestone, until the stone itself was actually stolen, folks, in 2000. It was actually recovered in 2001 near Washington, and was placed in storage at a sheriff's department. Now the gravesite itself is now unmarked and not known. But you look at Ed Gein and you can imagine people taking bits off his stone. I don't know why the relevance, if I'm really honest. Probably because it was Ed Gein. Everybody was fascinated, horrified by what he did. That people, it just shows you what type of people do, things that people do. Obviously, chipping away at his gravestone, hoping, oh yeah, we're taking a bit. It's crazy. Now, let's look at the popular culture that Gein has created, because let's not deny, Ed Gein has been inspiration for some of the greatest films that are out there. You know, Gein's stories had a lasting effect on the American popular culture. Um, Numerous appearances in film, music, literature. You know, there was a author called Robert Bloch, and his 1959 novel A Psycho, he created that based on Gein, because it gave him inspiration because it was macabre, it was his obsession with his mother, which everybody who's watched Psycho knows exactly what the film is about. Where Norman Bates is obsessed with his mother and he dresses like her, and she is lying obviously dead in his house. Now that is based. So in addition to Alfred Hitchcock's 1960 film of Psycho, Gein's story was loosely adapted into a number of other films, including Deranged, In the Light of the Moon, Ed Gein the Butcher of Plainfield, Ed Gein the Musical, Rob Zombie's film House of a Thousand Corpses, its sequel The Devil Rejects. I mean, Gein served as an inspiration for fictional serial killers, Norman Bates, Leatherface, Buffalo Bill, Garland Green, and the character Dr. Oliver Threadstone, and the TV series American Horror Story Asylum. There was an American filmmaker and a German filmmaker attempted unsuccessfully to collaborate on a film project about Gein. Um, the American filmmaker claimed that he had interviewed Gein several times, and ended up spending almost a year in Plainfield, interviewing dozens of locals. The pair secretly the pair planned secretly to exhume Gein's mother to test a theory, but never followed it through, because you can imagine. Even Gein's story inspired American grunge band Tad to write the song Nickel Belt from their 1989 album God's Balls. Gein also inspired an American thrash metal band, to write this song Dead Skin Mask from the 1990 album Seasons in the Abyss. Gein was also inspired and namesake for the song Nothing to Gain by American heavy metal band Muddy from their 2000 album LD50. When you look at the character Patrick Bateman in the 1991 novel American Psycho and its 2000 film adaptation, mistakenly, there's a quote by Edmund Kempter to Gein saying, "You know what Ed Gein said about women? He said, when I see a pretty girl walking down the street, I think two things. One part of me wants to take her out, talk to her, be real nice and sweet and treat her right. The other part wonders what her hair would like sorry guys, my speech today is just dead bare. What her head would look like on a stick. So basically, it was Ed Gein had done a lot of inspiration. Even quite recently in 2022, Gein portrayed by appears in the first season of Netflix series Monster as a possible inspiration for Jeffrey Dahmer. However, a direct connection between the two is seen as speculation. 2024, it was announced that the gentleman who plays, or who is in the main character for the Sons of Anarchy, will portray Gein in the third season of Monster, where Gein will be the primary focus of the season. So there is so many much that Gein has done. In 2023, a multi-party documentaries aired about the life and upbringing of Gein, titled Cycle, The Lost Tapes of Ed Gein. So there is so much that Gein has done. And personally, yeah, I am fascinated by Ed Gein. Who isn't? He was a very interesting character. It's one of those ones that you can't turn away from. It's kind of like, oh my god, the shock horror. And I can only imagine what that small town must have been going through. And it's still going through to these days because they'll still be emotionally damaged. Can you imagine being in a small town and then you have Ed Gein at your dinner table, you accept him for who he is, and people to then go on to being the most horrendous crime ever. It's one that shocked the world, but it's also one that's fascinated the world, is Ed Gein. And he's brought us some of the best films, ever. Um, but yeah, guys, so there you go, Ed Gein. I've really enjoyed covering this. I've got quite a passion, as you can hear, when I talk about Ed Gein. So next week, folks, I will be talking about Ted Bundy. I will be doing Ted Bundy. Now, everybody, there's another man. I'm going from someone who's makes skin and has trophies. Now I'm going to Ted Bundy. Now, this man was very, very convincing. He was very, very charming. He was very. Everyone was taken with Ted Bundy. So that's where I will be going next, folks, is Ted Bundy. But I've enjoyed covering Ed Gein. This is only a one-time slot though, guys. We will be going back to our 6 a.m. Sunday. Every Sunday, 6 a.m. I will be going back to that slot. It's just unfortunate that due to changeover, that I've had to do it this morning. So I will be back tonight, folks, at 8 p.m. UK time, with Fools and Ghouls. We will be talking Are We Ghosts to Ghosts? We will be looking at when we're out investigating and we're in a place, is there people like the spirits are seeing us as spirits? So it'll be quite an interesting one, guys. But as I said, next week I will be covering Ted Bundy. So next Thursday, in fact, what date are we on? I can't believe we're nearly at Halloween, folks. I am so looking forward to it. Da, 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 da. Where's my calendar? So, It's no my lucky day Halloween. So I'll need to check what I've got on next week, folks, but definitely tune in. Look at Things Network. I'm on Things Network. I'm on Ghost Squad Scotland. I'm on the Temple of Phoenix Rising Entertainment. I'm on BB3 TV. I'm there all the time. We're always here Thursday, Friday, and I'm always myself on a Sunday. So definitely tune in, folks. But everyone have a good Friday, and I will see you all soon. Bye, folks. Everybody take care.